And when federal workers got tired of not getting paychecks, everybody caved. And those 8 Democrats folded. You can't be outraged and entitled at the same time. Here we are again. Now we're all upset about the long lines in airports. But Democrats drew a line here. We were just as upset a few weeks ago about these ICE officers killing fellow citizens. And we said, okay, Democrats, find a spine. Do something. They did. Now we're mad about the lines at the airport. How can we be outraged and entitled at the same time if change is what we really want? That's what Liz said, not the way I said it, but we're going to go there when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
BET and PBS, the Tom Joyner Morning Show, and NPR, the cover of Jet and the cover of Time. #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list, 20 honorary doctorate degrees, a dozen NAACP Image Awards, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. From talk shows to talk radio, nobody's ever done it better. You like that? Uh-huh. This is Tavis Smiley.
They say time flies when you're having fun. The founding members cohort is now officially over. Hard to believe. It's been a joy sharing what I've discovered after nearly 40 years of conversations with presidents, cultural icons, and game changers in every field of human endeavor. If you missed the first cohort, the good news is that we're already planning the next one. Now, the seats will be limited, and those on our waiting list will receive exclusive early access and special discounts not available to the general public. So, if you are ready to transform the way you connect, lead, and build trust, do not hesitate. Go to TavisTalks.com and join the waiting list today. That's TavisTalks.com. The next cohort is coming. Make sure you are in the room. I'm Tavis Smiley, and I hope to see you there.
Don't you wish your life came with a warning app?
Stop. That dog does not want to be petted.
Just a little heads up before something bad happens.
Move your coffee cup away from your computer.
Oh, no.
So you can have more control.
Stop. You're texting your boss by mistake.
Uh-oh. Well, life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes like managing your weight, getting active, stopping smoking, and eating healthier, you can stop prediabetes before it leads to type 2 diabetes. It's easy to learn your risk. Take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Warning, the cap is loose on that ketchup.
Ugh.
Don't wait. You have the power to change the outcome. Visit doihaveprediabetes.org today. That's doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
We're at Doolin's on Crenshaw. It's a special place where the neighborhood comes together. Got the fried chicken, the catfish, the candied yams, the mac and cheese. It's all delicious. I'm Isaac Bryan. I represent the Crenshaw District in the California State Legislature, and I'm supporting Tom Steyer for Governor of California. California is under attack, and we need a fighter who's going to come in on day one and stand up for California values and push back. That person is Tom Steyer. Tom and I have been fighting together for the better part of a decade. Tom is the only candidate supported by smart justice because Tom has stood on the front lines of racial justice, economic justice, and true solidarity. Tom is the real deal. He's the only candidate in the race with a comprehensive plan to make the billionaires and the corporations pay their fair share so we can fund things like universal health care and education. He means what he says, and he does what we need. This is a moment when we've got to fight fire with fire, and I believe that that fire is Tom Steyer.
Ad paid for by Steyer for Governor 2026.
More honesty than you can handle.
More empowerment than you can imagine.
You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Elizabeth Booker Houston, noted social media influencer, attorney herself, health professional, and I'm going to tap into all that expertise in this hour. A lot to cover. So before I get to this notion of being outraged and entitled, and whether we can do both of those simultaneously, Liz, let me come back to the point you made a moment ago that in the last hours, Democrats have tried not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 9 times. They've tried to get traction on a bill that would fund TSA. And 9 times they've hit a wall, which raises the obvious question, whether or not Donald Trump and Republicans on the Hill really do want this crisis to end, Or are they having fun with ICE being at airports? Are they having fun torturing us, putting the fear of God in us? Because if Democrats have tried 9 times to get this across the finish line, and everybody seems to be bothered by what's happening at airports, and Republicans keep pushing back, how do I read that?
I mean, quite honestly, you read it as the Republicans being masochistic jerks. I don't know another way to describe them, or sadistic and masochistic. Because at the end of the day, not only are they hurting others, but they're hurting themselves. They're hurting their own constituency. I've been trying to figure this out, Tavis, for a while. Every time I go on the Hill, every time I confront these people or try to talk to them, and I try to talk to Republicans too. Do they want to talk to me? No. But I've tried. And I cannot figure out what the end game is beyond hurting people. I really cannot understand at this point what the logic is. It's not making them money. We're losing money. We're not doing well with our economy. Their constituents are not doing well. I the only conclusion I can come to is what I've heard so many psychology experts say over the years about how we've shifted from just the Republican Party to the MAGA Party, that it's very cult-like. It's very much a cult, and cults can be very illogical. And so I think that we have to stop trying to find the logic in this and start hitting them really where it hits them in the ways that they selfishly care about. So I did notice that, for example, Delta Airlines shut down all of their special congressional check-in dates.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that has to happen. These lawmakers are going to have to be hit in their own pocketbooks. They're going to have to be hit in their own personal lives. They're going to have to be negatively impacted, just like the people who they lord their power over. And I think that's going to be the linchpin in all of this.
Yeah. To put a finer point on what Liz just said, if you don't know how this works, when members of Congress fly, the airlines give them special perks. They don't have to stand in lines. They get to board early. They get upgrade, all kind of stuff they get because they're members of Congress. And why would they not? Because airlines always are leaning on Congress to bail them out and to help them. So it's a quid pro quo thing. Washington, as you know, we say all the time, is bought and bossed by big money and big business, and the airlines are part of that big business lobby. So Delta is first airline to announce yesterday that all the perks have gone away now. So we will see how those lawmakers flying Delta, at least, are going to deal with what happens when they go to the airport and they can't get any special privileges. So that's the point that Liz was making a moment ago. But let me circle back again to the point you made, though, a second ago that I think is worth interrogating here. If the only end game for these Republicans right now is hurting people, because you're right, it doesn't make any sense on any other level. If the end game is about hurting people, what is to be gained by that? I no naivete here in asking this question, but there's got to be something that we're missing. What is to be gained by running an agenda that is based and built on nothing but pain?
I think they're trying to go by the playbook of the past that we've seen with white nationalists, that we've seen with colonizers, that we've seen with all of what we've seen in history is, I can gain power by just stepping on everybody else. I can gain power, I can gain money, I can gain whatever I want. The thing is, it's 2026, right? It's not 1492. Somebody like me, a mom who was living in the suburbs, middle class, nobody, federal employee, can post on the internet one day and 6 years later have a massive platform of millions of followers, right? You have people coming out in the streets. You have eyes on these folks. The fact that I can hop on the metro and go down to their congressional offices and confront them directly, that many people can. There's an entire group here called Flare USA that every single week they take groups of people to go to these offices of members of Congress and confront them and tell them, like, this is what we have a problem with right now, and you need to address it. And so I think that they just still are trying to operate off of this playbook where white men with means owned all of the outlets, owned all of the influence, all of the ways to get to people. And I think they're still trying to get back to that, right? We see that with the Paramount Warner Brothers deal that was put forward, with the way that they've been bullying folks like Stephen Colbert with his show, with the way that they are trying to get all of the traditional media outlets. But that every time, right, something new pops up, some new platform, some new way for people to get their voice heard. And just to put tie this up with a little bit of a bow. This is why I always say that the First Amendment is the strongest amendment that we have. It is the strongest part of the Constitution, is this right to free speech and the way that we get our speech out there. And I think that these folks on the right are still trying to use this very old playbook where they were the only ones whose voice could get out there and cut through the noise.
So here we are on, what's today, Wednesday? Yeah, today's Wednesday. Here we are on Wednesday. Liz has laid out quite nicely and quite eloquently and given us a proper frame for today's conversation, where Democrats now have tried nine times to fund TSA, and they keep being rejected. That's Wednesday. Hold the phone. Let me take you back to Sunday. On Sunday, Senate Majority Leader John Thune discussed an off-ramp with Donald Trump at the White House to end these long lines, delays at airports, and all these ICE officers who were showing up. This is on Sunday. John Thune goes to the White House, talks to Donald Trump and his team about this off-ramp that they believe that Democrats would support, which essentially means we're going to fund certain parts of DHS, but we're not going to fund ICE. We got to have a separate conversation about that. But Thune presented Donald Trump a way out of this on Sunday. Trump rejected that. We're Wednesday now. Trump rejected this on Sunday. He posted, as you may recall, I quote from Donald Trump on Truth Social, "I don't think we should make any deal with the crazy, country-destroying, radical left Democrats unless and until they vote with Republicans to pass," wait for it, the Save America Act. He writes, "Kill the filibuster and stay in D.C. for Easter if necessary," close quote. So we see what this is all about. It's about the Save America Act. You know what that is, Liz. This audience knows what it is. He wants to nationalize elections. We saw the Supreme Court earlier this week in oral arguments, and those questions by the conservatives seem to suggest they're going to go in on mail-in ballots now. And so at every turn, they keep advancing these agenda items that will lead to greater voter suppression. So Donald Trump, again, is holding hostage Republicans voting with Democrats for an off-ramp out of the mess we find ourselves in right now with regard to DHS. He's holding them hostage over Democrats voting for his Save America Act. That's why we're in this mess. John Thune presented a way out. We could have been done with this on Sunday, but here we are on Wednesday with 9 times Democrats trying to advance a vote that they won't support. Liz.
Yes.
What do you make of the fact?
I'm just shaking my head at all of this.
No, I'm shaking my head too. What do you make of the fact that we could have been done with this on Sunday?
I'm just thinking about the fact of what I just said, right? Like there's this idea that voting is the ultimate way to express your First Amendment right. And again, they're just trying to crush people's voices. And I'm just shaking my head at all of this. This could have been done and over with, but they want to put the SAVE Act through.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, they're trying to say, oh, it's just a voter ID law. We know it's not a voter ID law. Yeah. We know that this would impact women such as myself who got married and took my husband's last name, and so my last name no longer matches my birth certificate, right? It would impact people who don't have passports. It would impact people in so many ways where they're not able to go and exercise their right to vote based on a really arbitrary set of reasons that has nothing to do with getting rid of, voter fraud. That it does not address voter fraud in any way, and that small tiny percentage of voter fraud that exists. And I'm just shaking my head over the fact that we are really playing games with this crazy man in this White House who I don't think he knows what's going on half the time. I think he just says whatever. Again, we're going back to what I said before at the beginning of the show, how they're not running on logic, right? The Republican Party is not being logical in so many ways. And the main reason for that is they have the most illogical man in the world heading their party, Donald Trump. We could have ended this. Absolutely. This could all be done. The issues in the airports, folks would be able to fly again. TSA agents would no longer be going now more than 30 days without their paychecks. And mind you, I understand the pain of that. When I was a federal employee during Trump's first term, in which he had the second longest shutdown of 35 days, I my heart goes out to those federal workers because I've been there before. But I am just shaking my head at the fact that for something that has nothing to do with this, right? We're talking about voter ID laws, that is the reason. That is the reason why Donald Trump and the Republicans are not paying TSA. That's the reason why we're seeing issues at the airports, is because they want married women to have to I don't know, go get passports and fix their birth certificates in order to be able to vote. I think that's crazy.
Yeah. Speaking of Trump not knowing what's going on, I saw the story last night. You probably saw it, and maybe Faraji or Miles can find the audio. I think there's some audio of this. But Donald Trump yesterday was introducing former Senator Markwayne Mullin, who, as you know from our conversation yesterday, is now the new Secretary of Homeland Security. Kristi Noem is out. Markwayne Mullin eventually got through and was confirmed as the new Secretary of Homeland Security. So Trump has a reception for him, introducing him yesterday at the White House, and he's reading out loud to the audience assembled, reading the backstory of Markwayne Mullin and trying to applaud him for being his new Secretary of Homeland Security. And while he's reading his notes, he comes across the fact that he's a Native American. And Trump pauses while he's reading the notes and turns to Mullin and says, "Is this true?" I'm not making this up. We got to find this audio, Miles. Trump did not realize that Mr. Mullin was a Native. It's been in the news everywhere. He's a member of the Cherokee Nation. We've talked about it on this program. The first Native American to actually run Homeland Security. And I think that's worth celebrating. On the other hand, he's also the same guy that tried to snatch the sign out of Congressman Al Green's hand during the State of the Union address when he held that sign up that said black people aren't apes. It's the same Mullin who tried to snatch the sign out of...
He also tried to fight a Teamster member during Senate committee hearing. I don't want people to forget that he threatened to fight the Teamsters president because that was so crazy. And Bernie Sanders had to step in and stop the fight.
This is the same guy, but Trump did not realize that he had appointed a Native American, and you had to see the video. You have to hear it because he was stunned by this. I'm like, you can see on his face, like, how did I end up appointing a Native American? Like, where did that come from? But he was totally lost about what that was about. All right, I want to play one clip before I come forward here with Liz. I played this clip yesterday. I want you to hear it right quick, though, because it underscores again what this play is really all about when it comes to ICE at airports. Listen to Steve Bannon.
We can use what's happening with these ICE helping out at the airports. We can use this as a test run, as a test case to really perfect ICE's involvement in the 2026 midterm elections. And remember, they said they're not going to work the X-rays. It's too complicated. They're not trained for it, but they're trained to, wait for it, check IDs. That's why it's perfect training for the fall of 2026. This is why it's such a brilliant, this is another 5D chess move for President Trump. Let's get ICE into the airports to help out to the lines. They can't work the machines. You know what to do? Just walk them down. Hey, we're speed things too. Can we check your IDs? ICE is going to be there in the fall of 26, just like they're in the airports today. So from the war room, suck on that.
From the war room, suck on that. We're talking about why these Republicans aren't getting serious about supporting Democrats or agreeing with Democrats on a way to get out of this mess that we're in. Democrats have proposed multiple times now a way to fund TSA to stop the mess at the airports. Donald Trump opposes it, says he wants you to vote first for his Save America Act. Republicans are lining up with him, but Bannon just puts his finger on it. This is a test run. It's a dry run for using ICE in the midterms at polling places. Pause for now. We'll let Liz respond to that when we come forward, and more on Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good.
Yeah, man.
Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Texas Senator John Cornyn is backing the Save America Act requiring proof of citizenship to register to vote. He says Democrats shouldn't oppose fair election measures.
Trying to think, what possible reason could they have? One is, of course, Trump derangement syndrome.
The president warns no deals until voting rules are tied to Homeland Security funding. A California jury has awarded a black woman, Lakivia Kiki Wilson, $15 million after finding her city supervisor created a racist, hostile workplace, even calling her an entitled N-word. Wilson says the verdict brings long overdue accountability. And Howard University and Bowie State University are launching a $4 million federal initiative called Ascend AI to boost AI literacy. The program will train students and faculty to use artificial intelligence responsibly. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Now at Big O Tires, for a limited time, get a free tire when you buy 3. That's right, buy 3, get 1 free. Valid on select tires with installation purchase. And synthetic oil changes start at only $39.99. Find your nearest store at BigOTires.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers are back in action tonight. They wrap up their 6-game road trip at Indiana. The Clippers are at home tonight against Toronto. The NBA Players Association wants the league to modify or get rid of the 65-game rule, the rule that requires players to play in at least 65 games to be eligible for postseason honors. The problem for the Players Association is that they agreed with the league 3 years ago to implement the 65-game rule policy. The league put the rule in place to motivate players to not miss so many games during the regular season. Several high-profile players, including LeBron, Steph Curry, Kate Cunningham, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, will not be eligible for postseason awards because they have missed more than 17 games. LeBron has missed 18 games this season. For the first time in 21 years, he will not be eligible for selection to the All-NBA team or other honors. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Where you eating at? Hi, I'm Greg Doolin, inviting you to a special celebration of Women's History Month. Join KBLA Talk 1580 for its annual symposium, The State of Black Women in LA. Broadcast live from Doolin's Soul Food on Crenshaw, Friday, March 27th, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., moderated by Dominique DePrimo. And yes, breakfast is just $15.80. Come get fed twice. Your stomach and your mind will thank you. We'll see you Friday morning, March 27th, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. at Doolin's Soul Food on Crenshaw for the State of Black Women in LA. Broadcast live only on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. So, who's really paying the price? Scores of people dead and counting. Over 9,000 homes burned to the ground. Entire neighborhoods in Altadena gone. The Altadena Eaton Canyon fire is one of the deadliest fires in California history. And Edison's own CEO told investors the company has not identified any other possible source of ignition. In other words, they started it. So, what does the man at the top walk away with? Pedro Pizarro took home $16.6 million in cash, stock, and other compensation last year, a 20% raise from the year before. Let that sink in for a moment. A 20% raise, while families in Altadena are still sifting through the ash. Now, Edison will tell you they cut executive bonuses by 40%. Sounds like accountability, right? Wrong. 6 senior executives lost an estimated $2 million in bonuses. On the very same day, the company reported $4.5 billion in profit for 2025. $2 million out of $4.5 billion. That math ain't mathing. That's not a penalty. That's a rounding error. And here's the part that should really make your blood boil. Over $1.6 billion in damages from a previous fire that SCE equipment started is now being covered not by the company, but by SCE customers just like you and me through rate hikes. The victims of utility failures are being asked to pay for the utility's failures. Sickening, shameful, disgraceful, reprehensible. You choose your own word. The people lost everything. The CEO got a raise. The company posted record profits, and your electricity bill is going up. As you well know, KBLA Talk 1580 has been out front and unapologetic about demanding accountability for SoCal Edison. But this is far from accountability. This is the system working exactly as it was designed, just not for you. With the KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Liz Booker Houston, public health professional, attorney, and noted social media influencer, always on the hill. But today she found an hour to spend with us kicking off today's program. Don't forget, in our second hour today, we'll talk to those 4 candidates of color who were denied a place on the stage last night in a debate that would have been seen by many of us, but was canceled last minute under protest by many of us, yours truly included, about why the stage was reserved for only white folk, the good white folk as I call them, but no person of color would have got on that stage last night. We'll talk to those 4 persons who were all denied a place on the stage last night. Becerra, Villaraigosa, Yee, and Thurmond all join us live in our second hour. We continue with Liz Booker Houston, though, in this first hour. In case you've just tuned in, I played a clip a moment ago of Steve Bannon giving you the real deal on what these ICE officers are doing inside these airports. He calls it, Liz, you heard him say, a 5D chess move, another 5D chess move by Donald Trump, letting these ICE agents get some practice, a dry run for what they're going to do come election time in midterms when they show up at polling places. Maya Angelou famously said, as we all know, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. It's hard not to take Steve Bannon seriously, but I digress, Liz.
I take him seriously. I agree. I mean, this has been a constant conversation, with the voter suppression that we've seen. So I don't know if you know, Tavis, I had worked briefly for the Jasmine Crockett for U.S. Senate campaign. Mm-hmm. And so I was in Dallas on Election Day, and I think people have already kind of forgotten that major voter suppression that happened at the Dallas voting precincts, where they got the judge to allow the polls to stay open another 2 hours because of issues. And then the Texas State Supreme Court came through and said, well, no. So now anybody who got in line after 7 p.m., their votes no longer count. So now they're having to sort through these ballots. I mean, we're seeing them test this over and over again in so many ways and trying to engage in voter suppression to affect the midterms. And I agree. I think this is just another way of having ICE agents get used to checking IDs, going into places where they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be in the airports. Why are they in the airports checking IDs? Well, if we normalize that, then we normalize them showing up at polling places and other areas, right? It's all about the normalization of what should not be normal.
Yeah.
And I want that to be very clear to people. And that's why we have to keep our eyes on it and keep recognizing this as something that is not normal, and we should not allow it to be normal.
Yeah, I saw a piece last night, and then when I read it, I saw a bunch of commentary about the piece, about how black people in particular are processing seeing black ICE agents at these airports. Now, if you're an agent, you go where they send you, but there's something weird, something that's troubling about black people trying to process seeing black folk as ICE agents, given the frame that we put ICE in these days. How are you? Well, you're not going to the airport now. You just said you guys have canceled your plans. But I'm thinking about how black people process seeing these black ICE agents in these airports, Liz.
I think it's been very jarring for people. All over social media, I've seen everybody talking about it. It upset me, seeing especially the images and the videos of a young black woman ICE agent standing there. And I don't know how to process it because I don't want to see my people doing that. Mm-hmm. I don't want to see that. I know people tried to make the argument of, well, but there are all these black women who were without unemployment and they're looking for jobs. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't think working for the overseers is the job you should be taking. Like, it just doesn't seem like the job that you should go get, I'd be on a pole before I'd be an ICE agent. Let me just be very clear. I don't like seeing it, and I think it's very intentional and insidious that they put quite a few black ICE agents in airports like Atlanta, where we have a large black population. Again, this is about trying to normalize something that should not be normal. And normalizing having your own people, your own community, wearing that vest, standing on that side. I mean, I just, and I think they're also, playing off of this whole concept of Black Americans who think, oh, well, this isn't about us. Mm-hmm. This is about Latinos. This is about Latinos, but that us versus them mentality, right? I think that's part of it too. We get enough black ICE agents to put around enough black folks. And then black people stop worrying, stop looking over there. Like, don't worry about that because, well, that's Latino immigrants. That's got nothing to do with you. But we know that 10% of black people in this country are immigrants.
That's right.
We know that black people have been snatched up by ICE as well. We know that black Americans who are not immigrants, who are black Americans who are descendants of slavery, they have also been snatched up. I posted a video on my social media not long ago, right after the murder of Alex Preddy. A young black man, he was snatched up and thrown in the back of a white pickup truck by ICE. And it was on video, and he was a black American man screaming, "I have my passport in my pocket." They did not care. And so I think that there's this very sneaky, almost psyop kind of method they're trying to use of putting these black ICE agents there to make black people think, well, this isn't about us. But it 100% affects all of us. And we know that even when it comes to birthright citizenship, when they're attacking, birthright citizenship was created to give formerly enslaved black people citizenship. It's always going to come back to us.
Yeah.
And so I want to encourage my community especially, don't be tricked by this. Don't think that we're safe around these people. Just because you see a face that looks like yours wearing that vest, don't think they won't come get you too.
Yeah. I'm only 42 minutes into the show, 3-hour show, of course, every day, 42 minutes in. I'm always looking for my quote of the day. I don't know how that gets topped. I think Liz has topped anybody who's going to appear on this show for the rest of these 3 hours. I'd rather be on a poll than be an ICE agent. I don't know how anybody tops that line of the day. That is the quote of the day from Liz Booker Houston. I'd rather be on a poll before I'd be an ICE agent. I love it. All right. I want to get to this conversation that Liz and I are going to have for the rest of the hour here in just a second. Again, about how we on the left, how we Democrats can at once be outraged and at the same time entitled. I understand everybody's mad about the lines at the airport. I understand that fellow employees and others retired are not getting paychecks. But when these too often milquetoast and spineless Democrats, that's me saying that, not Liz, when these too often milquetoast and spineless Democrats do get their backs up and they decide to draw a line in the sand, it's those of us on the left who start squeezing them, because we can't take it no more. And so the question again is how you can be outraged on the one hand and want to push back on Donald Trump and all these No Kings rallies that are scheduled 3,000 plus for this weekend. But when we get a little discomfort or discomforted, then we want to do a U-turn. We want to do a 180. We want to back up. I don't get that. I'm thinking of the Montgomery bus boycott. Think about that. Just you see where I'm going here. Liz and I are going to unpack that in a second. Think about how long those Negroes in Montgomery stayed off those buses. A year. We can't stand in the line at the airport and be discomforted for a week. And we're squeezing Democrats. Get us out of this. I digress for now. We're going to spend some time on that for the rest of the hour after I play this clip that my team found of Donald Trump yesterday just being gobsmacked by finding out in real time while he's reading his notes that the guy he just appointed is a Native American.
Is the only Native American. I didn't know that, huh? Let me look at you. Well, I think that's all right. He's got great quality, I can tell you. It's the only Native American in the Senate. How many have been there before you? Do you know? Native American?
I think 3.
3. Well, you're a fantastic representative. Mark Wayne has also been a fantastic advocate for our cherished tribal communities. He's now the first member of the Cherokee Nation ever to serve as a member of the cabinet. I didn't know all these things. I would have picked him faster if I had known. I would have made a quicker decision.
He's lying. That last part you know is a lie. Donald Trump lying through his yellow teeth. He's lying. He would not have picked him fast. He's gobsmacked that he was or is in fact a Native American. This stuff would be funny if it weren't. It is funny, but it'd be funnier if it weren't so serious. But he's reading this in real time and discovers in real time that he's a Native American. It just underscores the point that Liz made. Donald Trump don't know what the heck he's doing. I digress for now. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Generous listening.
Charitable listening.
It's why everybody wants to talk to Tavis. The conversation continues when we come forward.
Lena Bloom for the Bail Project.
Imagine you're stuck in a jail cell and you can't afford bail and someone offers you a way out. Just plead guilty and you can go home and kiss your kids goodnight. What do? What thousands have. You plead guilty whether you are or not. Cash bail makes poverty a crime. That's why the Bail Project helps those who can't afford it while fighting to end cash bail, because freedom should be free.
Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Girls who run the world. Girls who run this mother.
Women's History Month doesn't end. It crescendos. This Friday on KBLA Talk 1580, it's a total takeover. All day, all night. Women's voices only. Santita Jackson and Amanda Seals join our all-star lineup of women talkers as special guest host for the day. Oh my God! And our lineup of guests includes entrepreneurs, poets, elected officials, authors, activists, creatives, and music artists, including the Grammy Award-winning Faith Evans.
I never knew there was love like this before.
And Guapale. There's only one Faith Evans, and 25 years after she asked us to get closer, Guapale also comes live in studio to celebrate the debut album that became a classic. This Friday, only on KBLA Talk 1580. Tune in, turn it up. This one's ours.
We run this mother.
And we're live here outside the Perez family home, just waiting for the... And there they go, almost on time this morning. Mom is coming out the front door strong with a double-arm kid carry. Looks like Dad has the bags. Daughter is bringing up the rear. Oh, but the diaper bag wasn't closed. Diapers and toys are everywhere. Ooh, but Mom has just nailed the perfect car seat buckle for the toddler. And now the eldest daughter, who looks to be about 9 or 10, has secured herself in the booster seat. Dad zips the bag closed, and they're off. But looks like Mom doesn't realize her coffee cup is still on the roof of the car. And there it goes. Oh, that's a shame. That mug was a fam favorite.
Don't sweat the small stuff. Just nail the big stuff. Like making sure your kids are buckled correctly in the right seat for their age and size. Learn more at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
Visit nhtsa.gov/the
right seat. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Made fresh daily in the Mert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Elizabeth Booker Houston, who I'm honored to have on to kick us off in this first hour today. All right, Liz, let's spend the rest of our time talking about this. I mentioned a moment ago the Montgomery bus boycott as the quintessential example of what it means to stay committed to that thing, to fight for that thing you believe in and to ride it until you win it. And I've said many times, I don't know that, I'm talking now specifically about black folk, I don't know, first of all, we're not our parents, we're not our grandparents, we certainly aren't our great-grandparents. And I don't know that I'd want to be in a situation where, frankly, I was relying on us to do what they did back then during the bus boycott in Montgomery. I don't know that we have the fortitude, the capacity to stand firm like they did for as long as they did to bring that bus company in Montgomery to its knees. So we said we wanted Democrats to fight for health care. They did. And when we couldn't take it anymore, we cried uncle, and we started coming out saying, y'all got to fix this. We have said in every poll, survey, and study, overwhelmingly, we don't like the way that Donald Trump is using ICE, to put upon fellow citizens, indeed to murder them in places like Minneapolis. That's not even mentioning the persons who have died in custody at the hands of ICE. We talk about Pretty and Good, as we should. We never mention those who died in custody. There's a significant number of those persons as well. And so now here we are in this moment, saying we don't like the way they're showing up. And as a result, Democrats draw a line in the sand, say we're not going to fund DHS. We liked that initially until these lines at airports got too long. I ask again, how can we be outraged and feel a sense of entitlement at the same time?
I mean, we can't. And, you talk about the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott. That was my TEDx talk last October, was about the bus boycott and how we have forgotten how to build resilience and endurance. And, you remember when everybody was wearing those T-shirts a few years ago that said, "I'm not my ancestors"? And the joke was, "Well, I'll fight you. Like, I'll not." Maybe some people need to be more like their ancestors, because last I checked, the endurance is not there. We are seeing the shortest attention spans ever. I know it always makes people laugh when I say I hate social media, because I am a digital content creator, but I hate social media because I think it has really ruined our society. Everybody expects everything to be solved in the 45-second attention span that they have for a video clip. They expect everything to be solved in a viral video, and if it doesn't happen immediately, then it's not going to happen. But like you said, that bus boycott went on for I don't even remember the exact number now, but it went on for over 350 days.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was not where it started, and that's what I always say. It started 12 years prior. It was 12 years of laying the groundwork to get to that boycott. 12 years. I don't think people are conceptualizing what kind of time it takes to build a movement and to keep a movement going, and everything that it took. And I know I've said this on your show before and it made you laugh. It probably won't top the being on the poll comment today, but I always say people are waiting for that magical Negro. And there is no magical Negro. There's not one magical Negro who's going to pop up and say a speech and everything's going to magically be fixed. It required a lot of people in the community to come together and keep going.
Yep.
And so I'm just really trying to figure out how we get over this hump of getting people to understand how to endure, because our people have done it for hundreds of years. We can't stop now.
Yeah.
So how do we impart this knowledge to everybody else in this moment?
Well, my friend Dr. Cornel West has said many times, he's posed this question, not at all rhetorically: what can a blues nation learn from a blues people? What can a nation with the blues learn from a blues people? At our best, we have taught America how to protest. We taught everybody else how to protest. We knocked down the doors and everybody else followed through. We taught women how to protest. We taught animal rights activists how to protest. We taught gays and lesbians how to protest. We've taught the whole country how to protest. That is one of our many gifts to the nation. And so I just want to put, I want to just expand the frame here while we're using as an example black people in the Montgomery bus boycott and how we've taught everybody else how to protest. This moment is not just about black people. I'm talking about Democrats, progressives, all of us, Americans who say they want one thing but can't handle a little bit of pain in the process. So again, this is not just about us, even though we are the quintessential example of how to do this. I digress for now. Our remaining moments with Liz when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Why does Tavis say when we come forward?
Because he's not going back.
And you don't have to go back either. Forward ever, backward never. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
Old-fashioned soul. Where you eating at? Hi, I'm Greg Doolin, inviting you to a special celebration of Women's History Month. Join KBLA Talk 1580 for its annual symposium, The State of Black Women in LA. Broadcast live from Doolin's Soul Food on Crenshaw, Friday, March 27th, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., moderated by Dominique DePrima. And yes, breakfast is just $15.80. Come get fed twice. Your stomach and your mind will thank you. We'll see you Friday morning, March 27th, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. at Doolin's Soul Food on Crenshaw for the State of Black Women in LA. Broadcast live only on KBLA Talk 1580.
This March, we're turning up the volume on the women who changed everything. KBLA Talk 1580 is proud to celebrate Women's History Month, honoring the trailblazers, truth tellers, and game changers who shaped our world, our culture, and our community. From the freedom fighters to the firsts, from the boardroom to the front lines, from the unsung to the unforgettable. All month long, we're celebrating the stories, the voices, and the conversations that remind us that women, Black women, have always led the way. Don't miss a moment. This is our moment. This is our story. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580, Los Angeles' home for the conversations that matter.
I'm your girl, you're my girl, we're your girls. We want you to know that we love you.
Real talent is defined by what people can do, not where they learn to do it. So by stopping at the education section of a resume, you might throw away the perfect hire. You might miss someone who has valuable skills to offer to help your business thrive right now and in the future. Because the truth is this: Skills First Hiring helps you see talent others miss, like more than 70 million stars, skilled through alternative routes. When you let their story unfold, you gain a competitive advantage, because hiring managers who start with skills are 60% more likely to find a successful hire. See the real person, complete. See what others miss. Hire skills first. Learn why it's a competitive advantage at tearthepaperceiling.org. Brought to you by Opportunity at Work and the Ad Council.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Elizabeth Booker Houston. I got 3 minutes left here. Liz, interesting how this conversation, this hour, has come full circle. While you and I were talking moments ago, the New York Times just pushed out a story with this headline: TSA tipped off ICE agents before arrest at San Francisco airport. Transportation Security Administration officials told ICE that a mother and daughter under a detention order had planned to fly domestically, federal documents show. Here's a mother and her 9-year-old daughter walking through Terminal 3 at San Francisco International Airport Sunday night, heading to their gate to fly to Miami to visit a relative when they were approached, and the rest, as they say, is history. But again, a mother and her 9-year-old daughter flying to Miami to visit a relative, and ICE informs, TSA informs ICE who she is, and they detain her, and the story goes down the rabbit hole. But we were talking early in this hour about Democrats trying to fund TSA, although not fund ICE. And now we have data. We have a storyline here that, at least in San Francisco, and I suspect in other places, these TSA officers are now working in coordination and tipping off the ICE agents, Liz.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what I said at the beginning of the hour, that we have to, and I'm going to stop saying we, the Democrats have got to make sure that they have a hard stance against funding ICE, because funding TSA and keeping ICE in the airports still means we've got an ICE problem, and this is exactly why. Now, I'm not making excuses for that TSA agent. I hope they trip with both their hands in their pockets, because that was messed up. First of all, I thought we were supposed to go after criminals. I thought we were supposed to go, but criminal is in the White House. Never mind. Anyway, so I need them to take a stand, because if the ICE agents had not been present in the airport, I'm willing to bet that TSA agent would have never made that tip.
Yeah.
If they weren't just right there in their faces. Yep. And so again, this goes back to a larger issue, and I like what you said about, like, we cannot be outraged and entitled. Yeah. We cannot be entitled to the air travel and the comforts and all the things that we have, and at the same time be truly outraged over this.
Well, there's the evidence that TSA now is tipping off ICE. None of us are surprised by that, but there's the empirical data for us to wrestle with. Elizabeth Booker Houston, attorney, public health professional, social media influencer, digital content creator, TED Talk giver, hopefully not on a poll. But Liz, thank you for this hour. We'll talk to you soon. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. The second hour is going to be fire, as I told you at the top of this hour. We're going to be joined by all 4 of those candidates of color who were excluded from that debate here in California for governor. That was supposed to happen last night, canceled at the last minute because of a public protest about what would have been an all-white debate for the highest office in the most diverse state in the nation. Go figure that out if you can. We will start with former Congressman, former California AG, and former Secretary of Health and Human Services in the Biden administration, Xavier Becerra, who I see on the line. Stick around for Xavier Becerra up first, and then Tony Thurmond, and then Betty Yee, and then Antonia Villaraigosa, only on Tavis Smiley.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Texas Senator John Cornyn is backing the Save America Act requiring proof of citizenship to register to vote. He says Democrats shouldn't oppose fair election measures.
Trying to think, what possible reason could they have? One is, of course, Trump derangement syndrome.
The president warns no deals until voting rules are tied to Homeland Security funding. A California jury has awarded a black woman, LaKivia Kiki Wilson, $15 million after finding her city supervisor created a racist, hostile workplace, even calling her an entitled N-word. Wilson says the verdict brings long overdue accountability. And Howard University and Bowie State University are launching a $4 million federal initiative called Ascend AI to boost AI literacy. The program will train students and faculty to use artificial intelligence responsibly. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Now at Big O Tires, for a limited time, get a free tire when you buy 3. That's right, buy 3, get 1 free. Valid on select tires with installation purchase. And synthetic oil changes start at only $39.99. Find your nearest store at BigOTires.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers are back in action tonight. They wrap up their 6-game road trip at Indiana. The Clippers are at home tonight against Toronto. The NBA Players Association wants the league to modify or get rid of the 65-game rule, the rule that requires players to play in at least 65 games to be eligible for postseason honors. The problem for the Players Association is that they agreed with the league 3 years ago to implement the 65-game rule policy. The league put the rule in place to motivate players to not miss so many games during the regular season. Several high-profile players, including LeBron, Steph Curry, Cade Cunningham, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, will not be eligible for postseason awards because they have missed more than 17 games. LeBron has missed 18 games this season. For the first time in 21 years, he will not be eligible for selection to the All-NBA team or other honors. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black.
Follow the leader. Following the leader.
Oh my God.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
That is exactly what we have here, a controversy, appropriate song from Prince to kick us off in this second hour of our program. As promised, in this hour, we'll talk to all 4 candidates of color who were excluded from the USC KABC TV California Gubernatorial Debate, which was, in fact, scheduled for last night, but was canceled at the last minute, once again collapsing under the weight of public protest of what would have been an all-white debate for the highest office in the most diverse state in the nation. We start this hour with former Congressman, former California Attorney General, former Secretary of Health and Human Services. What a resume that is. Xavier Becerra. Mr. Secretary, Mr. AG, Mr. Congressman, how are you, sir?
Yeah, it's always good when I'm with you.
It's good to hear your voice, man. Thank you for your time. I know all of you on the campaign trail, you're all busy. I got about 10 minutes or less with each of these candidates in this hour. Let's make the most of our time. I wanted to start with you because you started this. It was you, Xavier Becerra, who sent that letter to the president of USC to complain about this arbitrary method the university was using to select those who were invited to participate. Tell me what got your ire and why you sent that letter.
Well, Tavis, first, what's important is to say that we did this by the rules. We didn't go out there and just, burn down a building. What we said is, you got to do this the right way. Give us a chance to prove our point. And so we fought. We fought for fairness. We fought for inclusion. We fought for balance. We defeated the money interests that try to move this debate only towards certain candidates. And at the end of the day, as you said, the weight of public opinion forced them to cancel it.
Is this, to your mind, a victory or more about damage control at this point? The canceling of the debate, that is.
It's certainly a victory for those who believe that the door should be open to anyone who's qualified to debate, to be part of a process to decide who will lead the state of California. But it's an incomplete victory because we have to have a forum. Voters have to have a chance to hear the voices of these candidates. And just canceling the debate is not good enough. We got to redo it. But we got to do it with the right principles in fairness to those who have deserved a chance to be before the voters.
How do we read the debate again was canceled last night, Mr. Becerra? But how do we read? And this is my word. You can choose your own. Obviously, I don't need to put words in your mouth. You speak well for yourself. But how do we read what I would regard as the recalcitrance of USC and frankly KABC TV? That they didn't bow down, they didn't back down, they didn't find a way to fix this, and in the end, they chose rather than fix it to cancel the debate. But they doubled down, they tripled down, they quadrupled down, they quintupled down. Every day they kept making excuses. They did not back up on this. How do we read that recalcitrance?
The best way to read it, I think, is I could spell it: MONEY. And what we had to do is we had to get RESPECT.
Yeah.
And we fought, and that's what we did.
When you say MONEY, I think I get it, but unpack that. When you say it's all about the money, what do you mean?
Look, the reason this debate had to be canceled was because my sense, these are my words,
sure.
Money is what drove who got selected to be in that debate. When you've got a candidate who's been polling lower than most of the four of us who were excluded, who, by the way, happened to be the candidates of color. But regardless, some of us were polling higher than one of the candidates who got bootstrapped into the debate. And Tavis, that was the issue I raised. I didn't say, hey, I'm a person of color, I should be included. I said, look, if you look at the objective criteria, I have a place on that debate stage. How is it that a guy that has less support from the voters over time is getting bootstrapped into this? That's not fair. That's the point I made. And by the way, I had to write not one letter. I wrote two letters to the president. I don't know if you saw the second one, but the second letter where I identified every single thing that USC did wrong. And I also had to write the station managers for KABC and Univision, the co-sponsors. And I also wrote a letter to the candidates, all the candidates, including the candidates who were included for the debate, and said, hey, is this the way you're going to govern as a governor? Mm-hmm. Or are you going to allow exclusion to run the state?
Yep. I don't want to beat around the bush here. We're talking to a national audience here who may not know all the particulars. For that matter, everybody in California ain't really tapped in as yet to this governor's race. We'll get to that a little bit later in this hour, I'm sure, with other candidates about why something like this doesn't make sense right now anyway, because people aren't really focused at the moment. So you can't start excluding people this early on when the primary is not until June. Again, put a pin in that for the moment. But you mentioned bootstrapped. This one candidate got bootstrapped in because of money. Don't beat around the bush. Who are we talking about and what happened?
Look, the mayor of the city of San Jose, Matt Mahan, who I don't know him well, but he's a decent guy.
Yep.
But he's got the support of billionaires, the tech community. He's raised a big amount of money in a very short amount of time. And the way the formula was written for who qualifies for the debate is not just who's polling fairly well. It's if you raise a lot of money in a short amount of time. And that's not a prescription for democracy, because even voters who are willing to make a contribution, $5, $10, $15 contribution, your voice would never be heard because those candidates would never make it on the debate stage based on this formula. You have to give the big money in rapid succession in order to make it onto the debate stage.
Yep. We are running an editorial on my home station. Again, this program is heard across the nation. For that, as I always say, I'm grateful. But here in California, in L.A., my station, KBLA, is running an editorial every hour. And one of the things that we argue in this editorial as a station is that none of the invited candidates had the courage. This is our language. None of the invited candidates, Mr. Becerra, had the courage, as we put it, to stand in solidarity with people of color and bow out of participating in this debate. Here's my question. How do we read the white folk on that stage, every one of them, who could have said, I am not going to be a part of it? They all gave lip service to it, but none of them bowed out of this debate. How do voters of color in California read that? No matter what they say, they didn't stand down, and they could have. How do we read that?
Tavis, I think you're saying it well. This is about leadership. You're a candidate to be the governor of the state of California, and you're not willing to stand up to this? This is pretty simple. It's a basic little debate forum, and you're not willing to stand up. There should be fairness there. How do we expect those people to stand up for our communities when there's a real issue about fairness? You know, when I was Attorney General, I had to take a school district to court, threatened to take them to court to desegregate their school. Believe it or not, I was the last one to file a desegregation case in the state of California because there was a school district in Marin County, a very wealthy part of California, that was still segregating kids because they were black and brown. We took them. We were threatening to take them to court. They were willing to try to settle. But these things still exist, Tavis. And if you want to be governor, you got to have the courage to stand up when it really counts. A debate stage, that's a pretty simple one.
Yep. 2 questions. I'll let you go. I know you got to run. I got to move on to the other candidates in this hour. This audience is vast. It is progressive here in California and across the country, but there is a significant number of California black voters listening to you right now, maybe the largest number you've talked to in one setting. There's reparations. There's black maternal health. There's equity in construction. There's equal opportunity. Don't get me started on all the issues, the kitchen table issues that matter to black voters. What is Xavier Becerra's appeal to black voters in particular?
Tavis, I will tell them by what I've done, what I will do. And that is, I mentioned that I took a school district to court to desegregate them, to treat folks right. I had to take another unified school district, in the town of Stockton in California, and tell them that I was filing an action against them because they were, you know how they were dealing with discipline? Mm-hmm. They were calling the police station. They were calling the police department in Stockton to handle what they called or considered disciplinary action. And guess who that was going against? It was going against mostly black and brown kids. And so I will stand up for communities. But here's the more important thing. It's not just standing up. It's giving them opportunity, and that means creating wealth. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm governor, all those communities that have never had a chance to be anything but renters are going to have a chance to become homeowners, because the only way most families in America create wealth, not income, I mean wealth, mm-hmm. is by buying a home. And we need to see more black and brown families buying homes. And so I'm going to do what is the most important thing you can do for a young black family, and that is give them support to have a down payment on a house so they don't have to just rent a place, they can own the place. But the thing that keeps most families from being able to own a house is they can't come up with a down payment. Yeah. I want to make sure we help make sure that's happening.
Quick 30-second exit question. How will you assess? How are you going to assess your viability to win this race? The poll numbers are what they are. How does Xavier Becerra assess his chances of winning?
Next 4 to 5 weeks, I'm going to know. Okay. If I can get the communities to get out there with me, I'm going to have a chance. And I'm realistic. Hey, I've had an opportunity to do some great things in life. I'm blessed, and I'm hoping I get to be the next governor. I'll know in the next 4 or 5 weeks.
I love the honest, quick, transparent answer. Xavier Becerra, former Attorney General here in California, former Congressman, former HHS Secretary in the Biden era. He kicked this off in this hour. And Mr. Becerra, for that, I thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day, sir.
You're the best, Tavis.
I appreciate you, man. Coming up next, Tony Thurmond, the Superintendent of Public Instruction here in the state of California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
BET and PBS, the Tom Joyner Morning Show, and NPR, the cover of Jet and the cover of Time. #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list, 20 honorary doctorate degrees, a dozen NAACP Image Awards, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. From talk shows to talk radio, nobody's ever done it better. You like that? Uh-huh. This is Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley.
They say time flies when you're having fun. The founding members cohort is now officially over. Hard to believe. It's been a joy sharing what I've discovered after nearly 40 years of conversations with presidents, cultural icons, and game changers in every field of human endeavor. If you missed the first cohort, the good news is that we're already planning the next one. Now, the seats will be limited, and those on our waiting list will receive exclusive early access and special discounts not available to the general public. So, if you are ready to transform the way you connect, lead, and build trust, do not hesitate. Go to TavisTalks.com and join the waiting list today. That's TavisTalks.com. The next cohort is coming. Make sure you are in the room. I'm Tavis Smiley, and I hope to see you there.
Don't you wish your life came with a warning app?
Stop. That dog does not want to be petted.
Just a little heads up before something bad happens.
Move your coffee cup away from your computer.
Oh, no. So you can have more control.
Stop. You're texting your boss by mistake.
Uh-oh. Well, life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes like managing your weight, getting active, stopping smoking, and eating healthier, you can stop prediabetes before it leads to type 2 diabetes. It's easy to learn your risk. Take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Warning, the cap is loose on that catch-up.
Ugh. Don't wait. You have the power to change the outcome. Visit doihaveprediabetes.org today. That's doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed, and we are continuing our conversation in this hour with all four of the candidates of color who were excluded from that USC KABC TV debate that was scheduled for last night, the gubernatorial debate, canceled, as you know, at the last minute under public protest about why all the candidates of color were denied access to that stage. We just talked to Xavier Becerra, and now I'm pleased to be joined by the Superintendent of Public Instruction here in California. He's the only African-American running for governor this time around. His name is Tony Thurmond. Mr. Thurmond, how are you, sir?
Oh, thank you, Tavis. How you doing?
Man, if I complained, I'd be an ingrate. I'm doing well. Glad to have you on. Let's make the most of the time that we have here. As the only African-American in this race for governor, how did you uniquely and specifically process that you were being denied access to that stage last night?
I just thought it was an unacceptable situation, given the diversity of our state and our country. To say that you're not going to have any voices of color is just unacceptable. Look, I understand you can set any formula you want to make any decision about who comes on. But if your formula leads to there being no voices of color, then you better change that formula and figure out a way to show some real values about democracy. And that's what we were pushing for. And I'm glad things have been changed.
So USC Professor Christian Gross, who created that formula, has defended his formula. He's been in his feelings, as we say in the black community. He's been in his feelings the last few days. I've seen him yeah, he has. I've seen him a few places, Tony Thurmond, defending his formula. And for that matter, dozens of other professors have supported him publicly, calling on USC to, and I quote, reject all efforts to apply political pressure on its faculty and its overall mission, close quote. So all of his academic friends across the country have suggested that his formula was okay, and he did not determine in the formula that it would result in a black man and 2 Hispanics and an Asian American being denied access to the stage. They have doubled down, tripled down, as I said earlier, quadrupled, quintupled down. He has, Mr. Gross, on his formula, and yet you all don't like it. So is it the formula, or is it something else? Y'all just didn't measure up to be on the stage?
I would just say it's the outcome. Again, you can come up with any formula you want, but if you see that the formula is going to give you only white candidates in a race where the stakes are so high, people deserve to hear from the candidates. And so I'm sure his intentions were good, but the outcome was unacceptable. You know, as a professor, if you turned in incomplete work, any professor would give you an F and say incomplete. I would say that their outcome was incomplete. They didn't have to even cancel the debate. They could have just said, hey, you know what? We want to have a broader conversation that reflects the diversity and democracy of this state, and we invite these 4 candidates to come on board. Instead, they panicked.
Yep.
And they pulled the plug completely and said, we're just going to cancel the whole debate.
I hear the word.
Wrong way to go.
I hear your use of the word panic. That might be a charitable and generous use of the word panic. I would use another word. I don't think panic is the right word, but this is your conversation, not mine. But let me drill down on that, Tony Thurmond. You say they panicked.
Yeah.
There are a lot of folk listening right now who say no. They did more than just panic. It wasn't just a panic. It was deliberate. It was intentional. And when USC and KABC could have fixed this, they chose not to. They canceled the debate rather than include these people of color. How do we read that, Tony Thurmond?
Well, it sets up an opportunity for a blame narrative. Now you're going to have people say, Republicans or others saying, oh, look, these people of color shut down the debate. And that was never what we were asking for. Mm-hmm. Look, we don't have to adopt all the formulas that all the business communities that say we don't want all the candidates on stage. We don't have to do that. Matter of fact, there was a debate in San Francisco led by many organizations that represent people of color, and they brought more than 10 candidates on stage, and they found a way to have plenty of time. And so there's no reason to limit candidates in the first place. And so it is a little suspect that they chose to cancel the debate altogether instead of saying, hey, we can broaden who's involved.
Yep. Full disclosure here, Tony Thurmond knows this. For that matter, all the other guests in this hour know it as well. I was honored to moderate one of the first forums in this campaign season alongside the Empowerment Congress. We had a debate on the campus of USC. Speaking of USC, now that I think about it, we were on that campus, and all the candidates were invited. Most all showed up. And so it is possible to have a stage big enough where everybody gets included. But I raise that not just because of full disclosure, and I want to be transparent about that, but I raise it also, Tony Thurmond, because it seems to me that with a primary that doesn't happen until June, whatever formula you use, it shouldn't result in what we saw happen last night in the first place, number one, but it's just too soon. Every poll, every survey, every study I've read suggests that most Californians, no surprise to you here, you run for public office in one statewide office, you know how this works. Most of us are not yet focused. Most of us are not yet tapped in. How this early in the process do you start excluding people from being on the stage at this stage of the game?
You're right. It's just a bad look for USC. This is a university that typically is serving many people in our community. And people can give their money to a university like this. They ought to have the decency to say we want to hear from all voices. You're absolutely right. This race is wide open. Most Californians have no awareness of that. And that's what the purpose of a debate is, so that people can learn about who is running and what they plan to do. And so, we're going to continue to push ahead and make sure that people know about our plans to build housing and to address homelessness, and to make sure that our folks have access to good-paying jobs here in the state of California.
Yep. I asked this question earlier, and I'm going to ask it a couple more times. So I want to get every one of you on the record in this regard. How did you process, after you and Mr. Becerra, Mr. Villaraigosa, Ms. Yee, after the four of you had your press conference on Friday, as I recall, calling on the other persons who had been invited to participate, namely all the white candidates, you asked them to join you, these rivals, to join you in a boycott in solidarity against what USC and KABC were doing, leaving people of color off the stage. As I said earlier, we're running a promo an editorial every hour on this station. I quote again, this is from our editorial: none of the invited candidates had the courage to stand in solidarity with people of color and bow out of participating in the debate. Close quote. How do persons of color in this state, and for that matter across the country, how do people of color regard or disregard those white folk who were on the stage, none of whom chose to stand in solidarity with people of color, and the four of you to say, we ain't going to be a part of this nonsense?
Look, they have a right to do what they have to do. This is a competitive race, and I get that. But they put out these beautiful statements saying that they value diversity. And then when they had an opportunity to stand up for diversity, they put their hands down. Instead of stepping forward, they step backwards. And I hope that the voters are paying attention to that. And every candidate has to be evaluated on many, many different levels. But for me, as a voter, as a person, I evaluated them as not being willing to put their money where their mouth is. Stand up for the things that you articulate. If it's a value, you would stand up. And I respect the other candidates of color who said, hey, we're going to stand together on principle to make a statement about including everyone in this opportunity. I give them mad respect for what they've done. The other candidates, I think they've shown us I guess their values only go as far as the words that were written on paper.
Yeah. Full disclosure here, one of the things that most troubles me about the way this all went down is that it comes across this debacle, this debate debacle, comes across as treating voters of color as fringe, treating us like we're some special interest, rather than accepting the reality, which is that people of color in California make the difference. We decide elections. We're not some special interest group. We're not the fringe. We decide the elections in this state, and yet those people of color were written off when candidates of color were denied access to the stage. What say you about that reality again? That we control these elections. We're not some special interest or some fringe group here in California.
No, you're absolutely right. California is a majority minority state, majority people of color. And as you've pointed out, the black community and other communities have made a huge decision in Senate races and presidential races. Many people have courted the black community for votes and then turn around and then do things like this to show disrespect. And so, again, nobody's asking for any handouts here. All we're asking for is fairness. And while we're talking about it, one of the candidates who was invited to this debate was a late entrant who, by their own formula, didn't qualify. And so that was part of what we were speaking out about, that they would invite Matt Mahan to come to this debate and say, well, we made a special exception for him. Again, if you're sticking behind your framework, then stick behind your framework and your formula. Don't change the rules in the middle of the game, which is exactly what they did here. Yeah. It smacks with disrespect to communities of color, really, and to all voters in our state.
Yeah, I'm just laughing internally here because I had to get Xavier Becerra to not beat around the bush and call his name. And you see the brother went right at him, Matt Mahan. Tony Thurmond didn't hold up. He went right in. I ain't mad at you for that. Let me just ask
facts.
you. Yeah,
facts.
I got you. Just the facts. I've got 3 minutes left, and I want to just do two things in 3 minutes. I want to start with the most important question I can ask in this hour, as I said to Xavier Becerra, and we'll say to the other candidates who will come on in this hour. You're talking to a lot of black folk right about now in this country and in this state, I should say, and across the country, given that we're nationally syndicated. What is your appeal to black voters in particular, Tony Thurmond?
Well, I want them to know that as someone who has served this state for 18 years, I'm prioritizing making sure they have access to housing and jobs. We are being pushed out in every community in this country, and we have to make sure that we have affordable housing. And I have a plan that I'm working on to build 2 million housing units. We are disproportionately represented in homelessness statistics and joblessness statistics. And I'm working right now to help homeless adults. And we have 10,000 homeless teens in our state who we have to help. And I've got a plan to get them housing and supports. And finally, making sure that people have good paying jobs. People are being pushed out and priced out. And they have to have good paying jobs. And until we can help them get there, I'm offering a tax credit that would give working Californians more money in your pocket for gas, housing, and the high cost of groceries. Yeah. So.
As Tony Thurmond knows, just put a finer point on it, in this state and for that matter across the country, sadly, black folk have become the face of homelessness, black men in particular. And so that's an issue that clearly matters to our community. I got 90 seconds to go here. In this hour, and for that matter, writ large in California, given what happened last night with the cancellation of this debate, we are in a conversation about candidates of color, not about voters of color. That's where I want this campaign to go at some point, not talking about candidates of color, but voters of color. What's your sense? What's your sense of what it's going to take? What's your sense of what it's going to take for somebody in this field to emerge as the choice, as a choice for black voters?
Well, 2 million black people in this state, and they need to know that there's only one candidate, myself, who's been speaking about issues that affect the black community, like reparations. Politicians have been throwing around the word reparations but putting nothing behind it. As a governor, I'll make sure we have a real reparations package so that we, have money to start a business, have money to buy a home, have money to get an education. And so it's going to take outreach and reaching out to folks. And we're reaching out directly to black voters, Latino voters. My family also are immigrants. The diaspora is wide. My family comes from Panama and Colombia and Jamaica. And so we're reaching out to black voters, Latino voters, but all voters. It's going to take real outreach through television, commercials, social media. And, I'm in churches every weekend. And so please invite us and please check us out at TonyThurmond.com. We want to represent you and serve you in more ways as needed in this state.
I got a quick 30 seconds here. How will you assess your viability to win, whether to stay in or whether to get out?
Well, we're not getting out. We're into the end. I've been in 5 races where they said that the black man wasn't going to win, and we won all 5 of those races. God is good. We can win this. I received 5 million votes. I'm the only candidate who's ever won in 2 statewide races in L.A., in the Bay Area, in all parts of the state. And so, my data tells me that when voters hear our message, we will come out on top. And we're putting it in the hands of voters and God and to let them lead us to victory in this election.
You heard it from Tony Thurmond's mouth. He's in it to the end. He is the Superintendent of Public Instruction here in the state of California, running for governor in the Golden State. Mr. Thurmond, thank you for your time, sir. Enjoy the rest of your day.
And if to win it, thank you, Tavis. Thanks for lifting up the good word.
Thank you, sir. That's Xavier Becerra. That's Tony Thurmond coming forward. Betty Yee and Antonio Villaraigosa. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. New York City is honoring victims of the transatlantic slave trade. Mayor Zohran Mamdani joined a wreath laying at the African Burial Ground in Lower Manhattan.
That history must never be forgotten, for we know the history of black New Yorkers is not just one of oppression, it is one of resistance.
Several nations are pushing to recognize the slave trade as humanity's gravest crime. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is warning that a GOP-backed challenge to late mail-in ballots could upend election rules nationwide. She says the theory imperils a lot as the Supreme Court weighs a Mississippi law allowing ballots postmarked by Election Day to arrive later. And Arkansas freshman Darius Acuff Jr. is making history, signing the first ever shoe deal for an active NCAA player. The projected top 5 NBA pick and Detroit native leads number 4 Arkansas into their Sweet 16 showdown with number 1 Arizona Thursday night. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Now at Big O Tires, for a limited time, get a free tire when you buy 3. That's right, buy 3, get 1 free. Valid on select tires with installation purchase. And synthetic oil changes start at only $39.99. Find your nearest store at bigotires.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers are back in action tonight. They wrap up their 6-game road trip at Indiana. The Clippers are at home tonight against Toronto. The NBA Players Association wants the league to modify or get rid of the 65-game rule, the rule that requires players to play in at least 65 games to be eligible for postseason honors. The problem for the Players Association is that they agreed with the league 3 years ago to implement the 65-game rule policy. The league put the rule in place to motivate players to not miss so many games during the regular season. Several high-profile players, including LeBron, Steph Curry, Cade Cunningham, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, will not be eligible for postseason awards because they have missed more than 17 games. LeBron has missed 18 games this season. For the first time in 21 years, he will not be eligible for selection to the All-NBA team or other honors. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Travel locals save big at San Bernardino International Airport. Whether it's a stay on the bay or a visit to Utah's peaks, we've got you covered. With $5 a day parking, your next adventure starts here. Plan now at flysbd.com.
Where you eating at? Hi, I'm Greg Dulin, inviting you to a special celebration of Women's History Month. Join KBLA Talk 1580 for its annual symposium, The State of Black Women in LA. Broadcast live from Dulan's Soul Food on Crenshaw, Friday, March 27th, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., moderated by Dominique DePrima. And yes, breakfast is just $15.80. Come get fed twice. Your stomach and your mind will thank you. We'll see you Friday morning, March 27th, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. at Dulan's Soul Food on Crenshaw for the State of Black Women in LA. Broadcast live only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Freedom is an endless meeting. So let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Betty Yee, former state controller in the state of California. Controller Yee, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Tavis. Always good to be together with you.
It's good to hear your voice. I've asked this of others. Let me ask it of you, obviously. What is your take on this debate debacle last night where the 4 candidates of color were denied entrance to the stage? Of course, it got canceled, but give me your take on it.
Well, for me, the bottom line's pretty simple, Tavis. Any debate that doesn't include the major candidates is unconscionable, it's undemocratic, and really it's un-American. In a democracy, we let the voters decide. So voters get to choose who they want to represent them. It's just such a fundamental principle. And in this year's governor's race, we've had this unprecedented effort to limit that choice, by sidelining candidates and pushing them out of the race. And I'm just not going to let that happen.
Is it your read, Betty Yee, that there should be no guardrails, that just because there are people of color running in the most populous state with a lot of people of color living in that state, that none of you should be shut out of any debate? Should there be no guardrails going forward for any of these debates?
Well, look, we are still quite a ways from the June primary.
That's right.
And the decision for USC to cancel it was a smart move. And actually, I thought it was a win for the voters who deserve to hear from all the candidates. They need to hear from all the candidates so they can make a discerning decision about who they're going to support. So it would have been wiser for USC just to simply invite all the candidates at this stage.
Yep. I've asked this question of others. I'll ask it of you later in this conversation, which is how you assess your own viability to win and when you will make your own decision, as Rusty Hicks, the state Democratic chair, has said, for when to get out of the race or to stay in the race. That's up to you, obviously. But I want to ask in a moment here what your process is for assessing your own viability. But first, one of the issues that we keep hearing about why Democrats in this race who are not polling well need to get out is that because California is, one of those states where the top two finishers, no matter who they are the two we end up voting on in November, it is possible, I don't know how probable it is, but possible that these two Republicans that are running could be the two that come out on top. It could not be a Democrat at all that ends up being one of the top two finishers. And for that reason alone, Democrats, including the state Democratic Party chair, have suggested that some of y'all need to get out. To that theory that Republicans may end up running against each other and there'll be no Democratic candidate for governor, you say what, Betty Yee?
I think the possibility of having the top two be Republicans coming out of the primary mathematically is possible, but it's implausible. We are here in California. We had such a huge lift and in mobilization and excitement coming out of the November special election with Proposition 50. We have congressional seats to win back the House, and so I just don't see it. And frankly, the Republicans are going to go after each other, and their poll numbers are frankly frozen right now. So there's a lot of room to move, and we have a lot of voters undecided.
One of those Republicans, Steve Hilton, who was, in fact, one of the white guys, one of the white persons invited to be on that stage last night for that debate that got canceled at the last minute. Steve Hilton, after USC canceled the debate Tuesday night, called on the Department of Education to suspend federal funding to USC until an investigation takes place. I quote from him, Mr. Hilton, that is, quote, "What a total joke California Democrats have become. Hours before debate, they kill it after their LPDs, low-polling Democrats, whined about being excluded. These people can't organize anything," close quote. He kind of sounds like Donald Trump in that regard, but he's calling now for an investigation of USC and calling for a suspension of federal funds to USC because of the way they canceled this debate in the interest of people of color. It's a DEI argument, and to that you say what?
To that, I would say he has completely got this all wrong. USC made a mistake, and like I said, it would have been a wiser move for them to simply invite all the candidates. This is what it's about, and he's doing his own version of excluding the candidates of color.
Yep. Let me ask you point blank, Betty, why do you think USC, to quote you now twice, you used the word wise twice, why do you think USC did not make that wiser move? USC is a preeminent institution in this country. Not a lot of dumb folk on that campus. It's USC. There are a lot of smart academics, a lot of smart people on that campus, but they did not make the wiser choice. And let me put another layer on. This is me talking, not Betty Yee. USC just can't stay out of trouble. Don't get me started. Every other day, USC's in the LA Times for some more trouble they've gotten themselves into. The Trojans can't stay out of trouble. Why did they not make the wiser decision here, to your mind, Betty Yee?
Well, there are a couple things. One, I know that they also have some media partners they were working with, and I think there was some decisions on the part of the media partners as well. I don't know the ins and outs of that. But also, USC really had control of this whole debate. They could have called it just knowing that it was going to become a debacle. And there were a couple of relationships that were in question with respect to one of the candidates, Matt Mahan. There is one of the co-directors of the Center for the Political Future is advising him on a voluntary basis. And then we know that Rick Caruso, who is on the USC board, or was a prominent leader on the USC board, is supporting Mayor Matt Mahan. So, you begin to start to think about just what were the influences in terms of the decision.
Yep. What do you make of the politics behind what turned out to be a political decision? You're putting your finger on it right now. I want to just double click it. What about the politics of what turned out to be a political decision? Because you're right. They could have just expanded the stage and invited y'all. They chose not to do that. Instead, they shut it down. That's politics to me. How do you read that, Betty?
Well, it's not a good look. When you look at the state of California, you've got, minority majority here in California, and you're going to shut down the candidates of color and essentially sends the message they don't matter.
Yeah. I asked Tony Thurmond earlier in this conversation how he felt as the only African-American in this race being denied entree to that stage last night. I want to ask you, as the only woman of the four of you who were denied, how did you process that personally?
I did not process it well, I have to say. What I felt was, this is a debate forum that is to inform the voters, that gives them finally a look at all of us and where we stand on issues, and to have, the only woman of color, be denied the opportunity to bring some perspectives to the debate stage. It was offensive to me.
Yep. Let me ask you a couple issue questions here. Speaking of your being a woman and being the only woman who was denied entrance, entree to that stage, talk to me about equal opportunity here in California. I've got some grave concerns about it, as do other voters. Equal opportunity, equity in job opportunities, etc. What would Betty Yee do about that?
Well, that we've got to focus on that, because that's what we're dealing with. That's the heart of all of our issues. We're a global economy, and when you peel that back, the opportunities are not there for many members of our communities of color, and that's what it's going to be about. We have to bring equity and center that in everything that we do. And I know there's an attack on DE&I in California. When we look at the data, when we look at the needs, that's the role of government. That's how we close these gaps that people are experiencing in their lives in terms of access to opportunity.
You were the longtime controller in this state, as we all know. What experience, what takeaways would you bring to being governor from all the years you spent as controller, the person managing, handling, dealing with the money?
Right. So, Tavis, it's very simple. There's a lot of conversation, and it is the top of mind issue for every Californian, and that's affordability. We're in an affordability crisis. We cannot fix the affordability crisis without a governor who can fix the state budget, period. We have a structural deficit. It's been in place for a few years. And if we don't come to grips with the fact that we can't tax our way out of it, but we can't cut our way out of it either. My approach is, how do we grow the economy so that we begin to build some economic strength and resistance and resilience, so that all of our communities can benefit from economic opportunities and puts us on stronger economic footing.
Some of these questions I'm repeating in this hour, and I'm doing that unapologetically, because I want to make sure I get all of them on the record about a few of these issues that are germane. We're running an editorial every hour, Betty Yee, on this station here in L.A., an editorial that says, in part, none of the invited candidates had the courage to stand in solidarity with people of color and bow out of participating in the debate, close quote. They all made nice statements, most of them did, but none of them made a decision to bow out given the maltreatment of the other candidates of color. How do you read that? More expressly, how should we as voters read that? They said something, but they didn't do anything.
Exactly. Well, words come cheap. The actions didn't follow it, and it was very disappointing, because it said to me, with all these other candidates, the white candidates, that our communities don't matter. They don't need us. They don't need us for their victory.
Here's my extra question, Betty Yee. I've asked it of others, and I will ask it of you. You are talking to a significant number of progressives right about now here in California and across the country, but hold on, those progressives are black folk. So what is your appeal specifically to African-American voters in this gubernatorial race?
Well, I want to be sure that as the next governor really begins to tackle the growing wealth gap that we have here in California, which, as we know, affects our black and brown households the most, and it's encroaching into the middle class right now. So as governor, we're going to be sure that we are attacking the affordability crisis as it relates to housing, healthcare, cost of housing healthcare access, and also looking at how we create opportunities where people can earn more. I mean, these are the ingredients of how you close the wealth gap.
Yeah.
And so when we look at doing that, I'm going to grow the healthcare workforce in the communities where the needs are so that we finally get culturally confident care. And we're going to look at how we can bring climate technology and some of these newer industries into our communities.
Got a quick 30 seconds here for this extra question. I told you it was coming, so you're ready for it. How will Betty Yee assess whether to stay in or when to get out?
You know, I am staying the course, Tavis. I'm doing what our campaign is about. We're focusing on people and how to make their lives better. And I just have to say, you know, standing up against bullies is nothing new for me. I've been doing it all my life. So I've been overlooked. I've been underestimated. I've been pushed aside as a woman of color. This has been my life story. So, but I still managed to win more votes than any other candidate in statewide office in California history. And it's a record that still stands. And even in this crowded field with a billionaire candidate and other billionaire-backed candidates, I know that voters want something different. So for me, my campaign is just beginning.
Former State Controller Betty Yee running for governor in California. Betty Yee, thanks for your time. All the best to you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Tavis.
Thank you very much. So that's Becerra, that's Thurmond, that's Yee. We will wrap when we come forward. Antonio Villaraigosa, former mayor of L.A. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Girls who run the world. Girls who run this mother.
Women's History Month doesn't end. It crescendos. This Friday on KBLA Talk 1580. It's a total takeover. All day, all night. Women's voices only. Santita Jackson and Amanda Seals join our all-star lineup of women talkers as special guest host for the day. Oh my God! And our lineup of guests includes entrepreneurs, poets, elected officials, authors, activists, creatives, and music artists, including the Grammy Award-winning Faith Evans. I never knew there was love like this before. And Guapale. There's only one Faith Evans, and 25 years after she asked us to get closer, Guapale also comes live in studio to celebrate the debut album that became a classic. This Friday, only on KBLA Talk 1580. Tune in, turn it up. This one's ours.
We run this mother.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
He is the former mayor of the city of Angels, Antonio Villaraigosa. Mayor, how are you, sir?
Good morning, my brother. How you doing?
If I complained about being in, great. You know me. Glad to have you on. Let's make the most of the time that we have here. How do you exclude 4 people of color who have won, many of them, major statewide elections, and all of you have served millions of Californians, and yet you were denied entree last night? What do you make of it?
It felt intentional. You know, there's an old adage: you don't change the rules in the middle of the game. They changed the rules and included a non-qualified candidate in the pool of the debate, and excluded 2 others, and we decided to take it on.
Yep. I heard that word, as did the audience. It felt to you intentional. That's a strong indictment. I ain't saying you're wrong about it, but unpack that word intentional, Mayor Villaraigosa.
Well, as you probably know, the candidate that didn't qualify, that was less than the polls, raised less money by about $3 million with me, and 2 points lower in the polls gets included. And the person doing his independent expenditure is affiliated with the center, and others as well who sat on the board, chaired the board, also had the influence. And so what we said, we took umbrage with it, and we said the voters have a right to decide. 35% of the people are undecided. They want to see what the candidates are talking about. The reason why people are undecided, frankly, is that they're struggling to make ends meet. This issue of affordability is the biggest issue facing us. And the other reason is it's
Trump is sucking the air out of virtually everything, and people haven't been focused.
Yep. I raised this earlier. I want to come back to it again here before I come back to the issue that I'm referencing here. The names that Antonio Villaraigosa is talking about. Let me just put something on this. Mike Murphy is the name of the person who is at that center at USC, who is advising Mr. Mahan, the governor, the mayor from up north, who got included in this debate, got invited, even though by every other objective standard he shouldn't have been there. But Mike Murphy is advising Mr. Mahan he's at USC, and Mr. Mahan made the stage. Rick Caruso, longtime board chair at USC, has given that campus millions and millions of dollars. He supports this guy, Mr. Mahan. And so there are all kinds of questions being raised about how Mahan made the stage when he otherwise shouldn't have been there. And so there are questions raised about his relationship to Mr. Murphy. I'm calling out the names, and Mr. Caruso. There you have it. That said, back to your use of the word now, undecided. You're right about that. The polling data suggests to us that so many Californians right now are undecided, which makes this decision last night so stuck on stupid for many of us that you could exclude people from the stage when we're so early in the process, where so many voters are undecided, and yet that didn't stop them, one, from not inviting you, and number two, from shutting it down altogether, Mayor Villaraigosa.
And the people who lost are the voters, and particularly voters of colors. One of the things I said, people have been talking about the candidates. We should be talking about the voters, including black voters, who have been treated like an afterthought. And I think that's not just a mistake. That is not the path I intend to take. I've spent my career working in coalition with black leaders, black workers, and black families. In fact, I've been a coalition builder, period. And this campaign is about making sure no communities left behind, especially those who've been overlooked.
When we come forward, our remaining moments with Mayor Villaraigosa, I'm going to give him all the room he needs to talk about black voters and what his appeal is to them directly. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. 10 Toes In serves as a mentorship and domestic violence prevention program. They support, educate, and empower couples during and after incarceration. They assist male returning citizens to re-enter society successfully and to help them maintain a healthy relationship with their romantic partner. They offer a mentorship support group for formerly incarcerated men. 10 Toes In teaches its Intimate Relationships 101 curriculum at male prisons throughout the state of California. They host sister support group meetings for women who are intimately involved with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated men. 10 Toes In is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. To access their services or make a donation, please visit them online at 10toesin.org or find them on Facebook or Instagram. They are healing lives through relationships. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
And the top-rated African-American talk show host in the nation, according to Talkers Magazine. You're tapped in with Tavis Smiley right now.
Tavis Smiley, and the former mayor of the city of Los Angeles, Antonio Villaraigosa, running for governor here in California, one of those four candidates of color who were denied entree to the debate stage last night, a debate that was to have been helmed by USC and KABC TV at the last hour. They canceled that debate. And all kinds of questions are being raised today about why it was canceled rather than another decision made to include these candidates of color. And under the weight of public protest, USC pulled the plug on it, and we're trying to assess what this all means going forward in this campaign. So here's the question I've asked of everyone, Mayor Villaraigosa. I want to give you a chance, take a few minutes here to unpack it as you will. You're talking to a lot of progressives in California and across the country listening to this syndicated program, but a lot of those progressives happen to be African Americans, and many of us are, of course, here in California. So what is your appeal specifically? What is your agenda? What's on it? What's in it for black voters if they support Villaraigosa?
If anybody's impacted by the fact that we can't afford rent, gas, or groceries, it's black families. It's the black community. And I've stood up with that community my entire life, since I was 15 years old when I helped found the Black Student Union, when I was working at the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, when I helped to start with our friend Mark Ridley Thomas, the Latino Black Roundtable. We've got to focus on affordability. I tell people, at the end of the day, people can't afford this state. And the next governor is going to have to focus on that. We're going to have to focus on good schools. You know, we know that a good education is a path to the American dream. But when you have schools that are failing, you need a governor who's got a track record. I took LA from 1 out of 3 failing schools to 1 out of 10. A 60% increase in the graduation rate. My schools, I have 20 of them, 6 grammar schools in Watts, 1 middle school in Watts, 1 high school in Watts, and they're now graduating at 92%. So we need somebody who's going to focus on every community, and someone who's got a record focusing on the African-American community.
I asked this question of others. I want to ask it of you again. None of the invited candidates we are arguing are in an editorial running every hour on the station here in L.A. None of the other candidates, the white candidates, had the courage to stand in solidarity with people of color and bow out of participating in the debate. After the debate, one candidate had another idea about how to call some other debate together right quickly. That didn't work. And all of them, for the most part, had nice things to say about the four of you and how USC and KABC ought to reconsider their decision about how this is going to be done. But none of them stood up and said, you know what, this is wrong, and I'm not going to be a part of it. I'm going to stand down. None of the white candidates on stage did that. I've been asking others. I ask you now, Mayor Villaraigosa, how we as voters of color should read that.
You know, I've said a long time. In fact, my mama used to say, Tavis, you're not what you say, you're what you do. Mm-hmm. And they were missing in action. In fact, when the 4 of us tried to sit down with them on a Zoom, none of them showed up. 2 of them just sent a statement, and the other 2 sent junior staffers. You talk about a lack of respect, not for the 4 candidates, but for the communities we represent. I think people need to take that into account. By the way, I've gone to every debate sponsored by African-American organizations in this state, and most of those candidates have missed those debates.
What is going to be your process for assessing your own viability? The California State Democratic Party chair, we've discussed in this hour already, has had his own statements trying to convince some of y'all to reconsider your positions so that we don't end up with 2 Republicans running against each other for governor, because in California, open primary, top 2 finishers go on to November. Some believe that if somebody on the left, some Democrats, don't get out, we could be stuck with 2 GOP candidates for governor, and that wouldn't be good, many of us believe. So what is Antonio Villaraigosa's process for assessing his own viability, whether to stay in or whether to get out?
You said it. The chair of the Democratic Party asking the 4 candidates of color to get out the race 3 months before the election, when we all know elections are fluid. Remember, I was up in 2001. I was up by 7 points, 4 different polls, 10 days out. I lost by 7 points when they did a commercial, that my first campaign for mayor, basically calling me a drug dealer, a gang member, and a Mexican, soft on crime. At the end of the day, these races are fluid. There's plenty of time. The vast majority of people are undecided. I've been in this race before, and I know this. Whether it was the last Senate race or the last governor's race, it's going to be 1 Democrat and 1 Republican. The Republicans are all decided. They're with one or the other. So it's the Democrats that are undecided. And we're a long way from having to make those decisions.
He is the former mayor of the city of Los Angeles, two-term mayor, former Speaker of the California Assembly. So as you've heard in this hour, all of these guests, all these candidates of color have extensive resumes, as does the former mayor of L.A., Antonio Villaraigosa, who I've been honored to have had close this hour of conversations with all four of these candidates of color who were denied entree to that stage last night. It got shut down, but I'm glad they made their way to our program to have their say today. Mayor, thank you for your time. I know you're busy on the campaign trail. Enjoy the rest of your day, sir.
My brother, it's good to talk to you as always.
Good to have you on this program. Thank you for your time. There you have it. Becerra, Thurmond, Yee, and Villaraigosa, only on Tavis Smiley.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. New York City is honoring victims of the transatlantic slave trade. Mayor Zohran Mamdani joined a wreath laying at the African Burial Ground in Lower Manhattan.
That history must never be forgotten, for we know the history of black New Yorkers is not just one of oppression, it is one of resistance.
Several nations are pushing to recognize the slave trade as humanity's gravest crime. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is warning that a GOP-backed challenge to late mail-in ballots could upend election rules nationwide. She says the theory imperils a lot as the Supreme Court weighs a Mississippi law allowing ballots postmarked by Election Day to arrive later. And Arkansas freshman Darius Acuff Jr. is making history, signing the first ever shoe deal for an active NCAA player. The projected top 5 NBA pick and Detroit native leads number 4 Arkansas into their Sweet 16 showdown with number 1 Arizona Thursday night. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Now at Big O Tires, for a limited time, get a free tire when you buy 3. That's right, buy 3, get 1 free. Valid on select tires with installation purchase. And synthetic oil changes start at only $39.99. Find your nearest store at bigotires.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers are back in action tonight. They wrap up their 6-game road trip at Indiana. The Clippers are at home tonight against Toronto. The NBA Players Association wants the league to modify or get rid of the 65-game rule, the rule that requires players to play in at least 65 games to be eligible for postseason honors. The problem for the Players Association is that they agreed with the league 3 years ago to implement the 65-game rule policy. The league put the rule in place to motivate players to not miss so many games during the regular season. Several high-profile players, including LeBron, Steph Curry, Cade Cunningham, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, will not be eligible for postseason awards because they have missed more than 17 games. LeBron has missed 18 games this season. For the first time in 21 years, he will not be eligible for selection to the All-NBA team or other honors. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicordoli Corte. Less than 24 hours before a planned California governor's debate, USC and KABC Television Channel 7 pulled the plug after a week of growing outrage that not a single candidate of color had been invited to participate. USC says it was just math, polling numbers, fundraising totals, nothing personal. But here's the problem with that argument. Every one of the 6 candidates who made the cut was white, and every one of the candidates left out was not. At some point, the outcome is the message, regardless of the formula that produced it. The 4 excluded candidates, former U.S. Health Secretary Xavier Becerra, former L.A. Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, former State Controller Betty Yee, and State Superintendent Tony Thurmond, are not fringe figures. These are people who've won major statewide elections and served millions of Californians. Here's the deeper lesson. California is one of the most diverse states in the nation. Latino voters, black voters, and Asian American voters don't just live here. We decide elections here. When the people organizing a debate about California's future build a stage that looks nothing like California, they're not just making a scheduling error, they're sending a signal about whose voice matters. Even some of the invited candidates called on USC to expand the field, ostensibly because they understood what was at stake. That said, it is worth noting that none of the invited candidates had the courage to stand in solidarity with people of color and bow out of participating in the debate. But we'll leave that alone for now. Canceling the debate was not a victory, it was damage control. The real lesson is that diversity cannot be an afterthought in the criteria. It has to be baked into the thinking from the very beginning. Voters of color are not a special interest. We are the electorate. With the KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte. As always, we welcome your feedback.
It's been such a busy day today. These 2 hours just moved by. I ain't had a chance to say happy birthday to one of the greatest voices we've ever been blessed to hear. Today is the birthday of the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. Were she still here, she'd be turning 84 today. And she sounds as good as ever. And so I want to just spend this last hour weaving in and out of these conversations with our guests, giving you a little bit of taste of Aretha. Because, again, today is the natal day of one Aretha Franklin, a dear friend of mine. I miss her dearly every day, but she sounds as good as ever. Turn it up, Miles. Turn Aretha up. We love you and we miss you, Aretha Franklin. I'm Tavis Smiley. This is the final hour of what has been a very busy day. In this last hour, two conversations as promised on the B side of this hour. A conversation with distinguished Duke economist William Sandy Darity, who returns to this program to unpack the impact, how about that, to unpack the impact of Donald Trump's wartime economy. But we commenced this final hour with this. Does America have any good options in Iran at this point? And what was it like wargaming regime change in Iran with then-President Barack Obama? Pleased to welcome to the microphone Ilan Goldenberg, former White House advisor and current chief policy officer at the new AIPAC Alternative. It's called J Street. Ilan, good to have you back on. How are you, sir?
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure to have you on. Let me start with this. When people hear me say that J Street is the new AIPAC Alternative, unpack that reference, if you will, please.
Sure. And I'm not sure I'd call us the AIPAC Alternative. What I would say is, you know, we are our own thing, but what we ultimately are is, like, we like to say we are pro-Israel, pro-peace, right? And pro-democracy. We're an American Jewish organization that wants to support Israel on the one hand, but also believes that supporting Israel doesn't mean blank check policies and support for the Israeli government, and certainly not for Benjamin Netanyahu. And what it also means is supporting Palestinian rights. So if you want to support Israel, if you want to support the U.S.-Israel relationship, if you want to support Palestinians, you know, the way to do that is to get equal rights for all Israelis and all Palestinians living between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean. And that, by the way, I should just say that is our view as a Jewish organization. Is that's where the majority of American Jews are, despite the fact you hear about AIPAC. Polling shows 70% of American Jews are where we are. We are the middle of the American Jewish community. We're also very much where most members of the Democratic Party are. And we think that this approach reflects American Jewish values. So what we are trying to do and have been doing for years is building political power, building this alternative, working with members of Congress, giving them space, members of Congress, politicians, people running for president, across the board, saying you can have support from the Jewish community and be very critical, for example, of what is happening in Gaza or what is happening right now in Iran.
Since you went there, let me follow you right quick here. How would you, in real time, define the U.S.-Israel relationship?
Yeah. So the way I can tell you what it is and versus what it should be, right? And it's moving that direction. What we think it should be is a normal relationship between, two partners and allies where if you agree on something, you work together on it. If you disagree, you don't support it and work together on it, right? And you stay out of each other's domestic politics, and you look for ways to cooperate when you are on the same page, but also not when you're not on the same page. And I think the challenge as we see it is that for a long time it has been Washington orthodoxy, orthodoxy in the Jewish community, and certainly orthodoxy in Congress. At least it was for a long time that the only way to support Israel is to support whatever the Israeli government is doing, unquestioningly. And this is what AIPAC was designed to do. They basically, that's their message. And they put millions of dollars behind candidates and say to them, you must support Israel and this Israeli government, no matter what the Israeli government was. You go back 50 years, Israel was a much more liberal country. It had politicians much more reflective of those kinds of American values. But, support these days, support for Israel is seen as support for Benjamin Netanyahu. That is just not how we see it. And that's not where we want the U.S.-Israel relationship to go.
So there's the U.S.-Israel relationship. When we come forward, we'll talk about U.S.-Israel, the U.S.-Israel-Iran relationship, or lack thereof right about now. Ilan Goldenberg wrote a pretty arresting piece for Foreign Affairs. It was titled, America has no good options in Iran. Trump needs an off-ramp. America has no good options in Iran. Trump needs an off-ramp. We'll talk about what that off-ramp should, might, ought to look like when we come forward with Ilan Goldenberg on Tavis Smiley.
BET and PBS, the Tom Joyner Morning Show, and NPR, the cover of Jet and the cover of Time. #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list, 20 honorary doctorate degrees, a dozen NAACP Image Awards, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. From talk shows to talk radio, nobody's ever done it better. You like that? This is Tavis Smiley.
They say time flies when you're having fun. The founding members cohort is now officially over. Hard to believe. It's been a joy sharing what I've discovered after nearly 40 years of conversations with presidents, cultural icons, and game changers in every field of human endeavor. If you missed the first cohort, the good news is that we're already planning the next one. Now, the seats will be limited, and those on our waiting list will receive exclusive early access and special discounts not available to the general public. So, if you are ready to transform the way you connect, lead, and build trust, do not hesitate. Go to TavisTalks.com and join the waiting list today. That's TavisTalks.com. The next cohort is coming. Make sure you are in the room. I'm Tavis Smiley, and I hope to see you there.
We're at Doolin's on Crenshaw. It's a special place where the neighborhood comes together. Got the fried chicken, the catfish, the candied yams, the mac and cheese. It's all delicious. I'm Isaac Bryan. I represent the Crenshaw District in the California State Legislature, and I'm supporting Tom Steyer for Governor of California. California is under attack, and we need a fighter who's going to come in on day one and stand up for California values and push back. That person is Tom Steyer. Tom and I have been fighting together for the better part of a decade. Tom is the only candidate supported by smart justice because Tom has stood on the front lines of racial justice, economic justice, and true solidarity. Tom is the real deal. He's the only candidate in the race with a comprehensive plan to make the billionaires and the corporations pay their fair share so we can fund things like universal health care and education. He means what he says, and he does what we need. This is a moment when we've got to fight fire with fire, and I believe that fire is Tom Steyer.
Ad paid for by Steyer for Governor 2026.
Don't you wish your life came with a warning app?
Stop. That dog does not want to be petted.
Just a little heads up before something bad happens.
Move your coffee cup away from your computer.
Oh, no.
So you can have more control.
Stop. You're texting your boss by mistake.
Uh-oh. Well, life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes like managing your weight, getting active, stopping smoking, and eating healthier, you can stop prediabetes before it leads to type 2 diabetes. It's easy to learn your risk. Take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Warning, the cap is loose on that catch-up.
Ugh. Don't wait. You have the power to change the outcome. Visit doihaveprediabetes.org today. That's doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
Freedom is an endless meeting, so let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
Ain't nobody like the Queen of Soul. Today is Aretha's birthday. She'd be 84 if she was still here, and that is one of the greatest albums ever recorded. It's the Amazing Grace album, recorded live here in L.A. with the Reverend James Cleveland. Turn it up, Miles. Turn it up. I hate stepping on the Queen of Soul, but the conversation must go on. But happy birthday to the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. Aretha sang it all: R&B, gospel, pop, opera, jazz. Nothing Aretha couldn't sing, and so we celebrate Aretha Franklin today on her natal day. We continue our conversation right now with Ilan Goldenberg, former White House advisor and chief policy officer at the J Street organization in the nation's capital. I said a moment ago, in case you've just tuned in, he wrote a pretty arresting piece that got my attention in Foreign Affairs. The title reads, and I quote, "America has no good options in Iran. Trump needs an off-ramp." Before I get to what that off-ramp looks like or ought to look like, Ilan, let me just ask your assessment of where we are today. And it's a difficult question, I know, because every other hour of every day, the narrative in the White House, out of the Department of War, with Hegseth, keeps changing. I don't know where we are. I don't know what we're doing. I don't know why we got into this. I don't know how we're going to get out of it. I don't think anybody does. Back to your point, we have no good options in Iran, and Trump is looking for an off-ramp. But before we get to the piece that you wrote, tell me your assessment of the mess that we find ourselves in right now.
Sure. And look, I think there's two levels to it.
Okay.
Long term, I think what the problem that we have here is Trump went into this war without a plan, didn't really explain his objectives at all, right? And basically came out and said the regime needs to change. That's what he said in his initial statement, right? We need to have the people of Iran need to rise up. And then basically he's created a situation where for the U.S. to win and be seen as winning, either we need regime change, which is not going to happen, and I think everybody acknowledges at this point that's incredibly unrealistic, or he needs to be able to provide security for the entire Gulf region, make sure oil is getting out and not affecting oil prices. The global economy is stable. That is seen as a win. He needs to get to that level of security in terms of stopping Iranian attacks coming throughout the Middle East. All Iran needs to do to win is basically either survive, which the regime is doing so far, or cause just a little bit of chaos, right? Just a tanker going boom every once in a while, a missile flying into an oil facility in Saudi Arabia or UAE or Qatar. And this dynamic now where we can win every battle, right? We can knock down 90% of missiles and 10% of missiles are getting through. That is still an Iranian win. And that is a lot like Iraq and Afghanistan, except this time, thankfully, without ground forces. So it's a lot less people dying at the moment. The dynamic is it's naval, it's air, but the bottom line is, during Iraq and Afghanistan, we had to control all this territory and prevent insurgents from doing anything. And all they had to do, again, was make something explode every once in a while and then hide inside the population. And so that's the scenario we're in now. And the problem in a scenario like that, it's exactly what we did in Iraq and Afghanistan. You're like, well, we can win if only we put more into the fight. And that's just a trap. And you just go further and further and further into it. And so right now, like on the kind of meta war level, that is where we are at. And there's no solution for that. It could be 3 months, 6 months, 2 years. We're just going to keep spending more unless we find a way out.
So when you wrote this piece that America has no good options in Iran, that Trump needs an off-ramp, we'll get to the off-ramp piece again in just a second here. But how does one make a decision when one has no good options from which to choose?
Right. Well, I think what a lot of American leaders have done when they have no good options to wish to choose, whether it's Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, is a lot of American presidents have said, well, I have no good options, but I can't afford to lose. Because if I lose, if I'm seen as losing politically, that's damaging. And so what am I going to do? I'm going to escalate. I'm going to put more resources in. And that happened in Vietnam in 1965, when Lyndon Johnson made a decision to throw hundreds of thousands of troops in. It happened with George Bush after things went wrong, after the initial victory against Saddam. Just years of let's try again and let's try more. And, for Donald Trump right now, that looks like the most likely scenario of what that looks like is him invading a place called Karg Island, which is basically this island in the Persian Gulf where 90% of Iran's oil goes through. So now we have news reports of thousands of American troops, few thousand, right, being moved into the Middle East.
That's right.
Paratroopers and land and Marines. And the idea is, okay, let's take Karg Island. And if we take Karg Island, what could be a pretty bloody fight, then the Iranians will have no choice but to give up. That's his rationale, right? Because we'll control their oil. Something that's so Trumpian, right? Like, we control their oil. Reality is, what we've seen so far is the Iranians aren't going to give up. Most likely, they'll